Welcome to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast, where we break down the complex and emotional process of divorce into manageable, easy-to-understand steps. I'm your host, Greer Howard, and with me is Bobby Buchanan, widely recognized as one of Illinois' top divorce attorneys, offering unmatched insight and experience in family law. Well, Bobby, we are back today with a Q&A, and when you're going through a divorce, there's so much going on that at times you're not even asking, certain questions that you probably should be asking. And so today we're going to do a little Q&A, go through a couple of questions that people might have that they're not even maybe thinking about as they're approaching divorce that we're just going to discuss. And we'll be talking about it, some of the facts, some advice, maybe some strategies that people can have in place if they are going to be going through a divorce in Illinois. So Bobby, we are going to dive right in today. And our first question is going to be, can I stay in the marital home during the divorce? And do you mind if I set up like a hypothetical situation when we do these questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's paint a picture so people can kind of envision whether or not it's similar to what they're going through.
I love it. Okay. So let's say that we have Jessica and Mark, and they own a home together, and Mark moves out, but later demands that Jessica leave so he can sell the house. So can Jessica stay?
So I like this question because, one, the parties have already separated. And I think that when I was thinking through today's questions, one thing that I was thinking about was the easiest divorces that we have in the office are the ones where people have already separated. They've figured out the initial untangling, and they're getting us involved after they've physically separated, which, as we know, physical separation also equals some emotional separation as well, which is a big deal. So in this scenario, Mark and Jessica, they've already physically separated, but now they're trying to kind of finalize things. And Mark has this idea about, well, we need to sell the house to get this done, and says, Jessica, you need to leave so we can sell it. The short answer is no, Jessica doesn't have to leave. That's her house. She has as much right to stay in that house as anybody does. So Mark can't just tell her to get out.
So what happens if there are kids involved? So we don't know if Jessica and Mark have kids in this particular scenario, but I imagine that might complicate things.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say Mark kind of, he screwed up a little bit by moving out. What we always say when there's kids involved, you got to be really careful about moving out. Whichever parent moves out kind of puts themselves behind the 8 ball. It's really hard to move out and the kids stay in the house and then life goes on. You turn yourself into very easily the every other weekend parent. So if you are a parent that wants substantial time, that wants 50-50 time, and there might be some disagreement on that issue, don't move out. You gotta sit tight, talk with a lawyer, strategize about what's going on. Obviously, these things are complicated and it might be getting emotional, maybe semi-toxic in the household. It's really hard to have you both under the roof. And so somebody moves out. But you got to be careful when there's kids involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And, back to our scenario with Jessica and Mark, they own the home together. But we kind of mentioned this before, and, Jessica wants to stay, but some of the things that, you have to think about is, who is on the mortgage, right? So who actually has the loan, and then also potentially who's on the deed for the house. Does that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. It matters as far as what eventually happens with the house. But again, it doesn't matter as far as Jessica's right to stay in the house, nor does it matter in regard to some people say, well, I don't want to move out because the other side is going to claim that I abandoned the residence and then I don't have any claim to the equity or the value of the residence. Well, that's not true either. Mark moved out, but if that house was purchased during the marriage, it's as much Mark's property as it is Jessica's. So who's on the mortgage and who's on the deed is really going to come into play as we figure out what happens with this house. Mark has this idea, his master plan is sell the house and then maybe we're going to split the equity. Well, maybe Jessica loves the house. Maybe it isn't a good school district and they don't have kids, but Jessica has this idea that she wants to stay there for a future family. So she wants to buy Mark out. So they need to figure out what the plan is there and actually come to an agreement before Jessica does anything. So Mark is somewhat SOL with his plan at this point, unless he gets an agreement from Jessica about what's going to happen when they sell it.
Yeah. And what about for Mark right now, even though he's moved out, is he still responsible for paying half the mortgage?
Well, legally speaking, this is really a gray area. Who is quote unquote responsible for it comes down to who is on the mortgage. So if Mark is on the mortgage and he says, well, I'm not responsible, I'm not going to pay, you're the one living in the house. And Jessica says, well, I'm not going to pay because I'm not on the mortgage. It's Mark that is going to be hurt because it's going to go on his credit. I mean, as far as his relationship with the bank, it's, he's the one that really needs to watch out if he doesn't pay. Now, if Mark just thinks that's ridiculous, why do I have to pay for this house that I'm not living in? And Jessica won't budge and doesn't see that maybe that is a little unfair, then Mark's got to figure out whether or not he's going to court to litigate this and file motions and ask the judge to order Jessica to do something, or maybe he's somehow enticing her to go to mediation or do some sort of collaborative divorce, which is what we always preach here, is keep it out of court as much as possible.
Yeah. You know what I think, Bobby? I think they need to come see you.
Well, we can do
the more we talk about this, the more I'm like, you know what? I think Jessica and Mark need some attorneys.
They might, because the fact that he's trying to tell her to get out of the house and she's saying no, that can be definitely an impasse where some attorneys might be able to help.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to another question. Okay. So our next question, what happens if my spouse drains our bank account? And here's our scenario. So David notices that Sarah withdrew $25,000 from their joint account right after they decided to divorce. Can he get that money back?
Oh, David. I'm glad that he actually saw it, because we've had clients where, oftentimes in a marriage, one side is well familiar with the finances and the other side just trusts that the finances are being taken care of. And then something happens. Maybe a credit card gets declined or a debit card gets declined, and they look into it deeper and they see that they have a lot less money than they expected. And then they dig even deeper, and it turns out for the last 2-3 years, the husband or the wife has been spending astronomical amounts of money that the other side doesn't know about. We hear about this not every day, but it's not uncommon. So what can really happen here? Well, it depends on what Sarah did with the money. So when we say drain the bank account, what did she do with the money? Did she, take out the cash and burn it up in a bonfire? Did she throw it off the back of a boat? Or did she just move it into another account? If she just moved it into another account, yeah, he's going to get some of that back. I mean, that can be traced relatively easily. The money still exists. If she did something else with it that, she spent it on, let's say, expensive purses or an expensive purse, well, now we got to value that purse and we got to divide it somehow. We got to sell it and get the money back. But most of the time when money is moved like this, it can be gotten back. I mean, we have even gotten back money that was sent to the IRS before, and we convinced the IRS to send it back to us. So it can happen.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you kind of think of it as, if all of your money is marital property, whether it's in, David's hands or Sarah's hands, it's still considered marital property.
Yeah, exactly. Just because Sarah moved it from one bank account to another doesn't mean that it's not still marital property. The real concern here is that Sarah's going to do something with that money that can't be brought back. So if we do see financial activity like that, we want to take it seriously, but it's not something where, it's not the worst case scenario that people often think it is.
Right. I mean, so let's say she goes on this like fabulous vacation with her new boyfriend or whatever. Can you take that 25,000? Like, let's say they're worth, just to make it even, let's say they're worth 100,000, and she spends the 25 on this vacation. Then can they say, okay, well, if we're going to split it half and you're each getting 50, well, now she only gets 25 because she already spent the 25. So, and he gets 50. Is that something fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is really the process of a dissipation claim. And dissipation is where one side spends money on something that's not marital whatsoever, and doing it, spending the money on a vacation or something lavish like that for a boyfriend is absolutely dissipation. The key here is that you have to claim it as part of the divorce process. And part of our hypothetical talked about it happening right after the divorce was filed, I believe. If it happens before the divorce is filed, you can't sleep on it. If this sort of spending is going on for years and years, and then you get divorced, you can't go back 5 years and say, well, she's been spending like this forever, I want to claw back all that money. It doesn't work like that. So you really, you should be on top of your finances. You should know what's going on so that if that is happening, you can make a dissipation claim.
Okay. All right. So David, take a deep breath. Calm down. David. Everything's going to be okay. But also call Bobby because he can help you out. And then also, always as a side note, and whenever we have these conversations, it's just such a great reminder for people to remember you cannot put your head in the sand when it comes to your finances. Even if you're not the one that's making the majority of the money or you're not paying the bills, you need to know what's going on with your finances as a couple. So I just feel like we need to remind people.
Yeah. Put a credit alert on, check your credit report. Make sure that you're checking your bank accounts, and if you don't have that trust there with the other side, if you think fishy stuff is going on, it's best that you do talk to a lawyer.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to another question. And isn't this the perfect question? Because we were just talking about who was it? Jessica? Yeah, running out.
Or Sarah going on. Sarah's going on her lavish vacations. Yeah.
So this is the next question. Can I start dating before my divorce is final? So here we have Megan. She is separated and she is dating. Her ex is John and says it will affect custody. Is he right?
Well, John could be right. And I'm sure this is really emotional for both of them. It's always a sticky situation. I mean, I think the broader question is it a good idea to date during the divorce process at all? So yeah, it could affect custody. We'll answer that question first. It affects custody if you're introducing your new boyfriend or girlfriend to your kids and they're around. I mean, that's something that the court is going to look at. Ultimately, if we're fighting over the kids, which is something, we really want to avoid, but happens, the court, the judge, the GAL, the mediator is going to look at that. The GAL mainly being the person that's really going to dive in and investigate and give a recommendation. They're going to say, you know what? I don't think this is in the best interest of the kids that, you guys split. They're trying to wrap their heads around this divorce situation. And now they have this new guy that's here or this new girl, and it's not the best thing for them. So that's the big one. That's how it can affect custody. Now, if you're just dating on the side and really you're keeping it under wraps and your kids don't know about it and it's really on the DL, if you will, then you're probably okay as far as the custody situation, but you're probably poking the bear a bit. I mean, it's hard to see your husband or your wife start to date someone else during the divorce process. It never makes the divorce process easier.
Yeah, definitely not. I have a rule. So I'm divorced, but if anybody ever tells me about someone, like, oh, they've just gotten divorced or they're going through a divorce, you should meet them. I'm like, We'll give him a year at least post-divorce, and then I'll meet him because, you're typically not your best self, going through a divorce, and your new, person that you're hanging out with probably doesn't want to hear about all the drama, and like you always talk about, kids are first. If you have kids, you've got to put them first. They're going through so much during a divorce. The last thing they need is you bringing around whoever you're dating. I mean, I totally, totally agree with that and see the wisdom. And you've mentioned before how important it is to get a counselor, during this time. And I can imagine a good counselor would tell you that it'd be a good time to date. You don't even know who you are anymore. And dating's changed a lot. So
yeah. I mean, we're all over the place when we, split up with someone and, someone we've been with forever. And now we're just trying to find our bearings and figure out who we are as an independent person again. And so dating in that time it's precarious and tricky, but it's hard too. Like loneliness is a real thing. And, we probably haven't had that affection from our spouse in a while. So I get it. I get it totally, but it's not going to make anything easier if you start getting on the dating site.
Yeah. So if you have to, like you're saying, kind of just keep it sort of private on the DL, not really, obviously not meeting your kids, that type of thing. Okay.
Absolutely.
And for Illinois, just to be like clear as far as the law, it is a no fault divorce date. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's no fault. So we don't get into infidelity or anything like that in the divorce process. There's really only two circumstances where it's legally relevant. You're bringing that person around the kids, and that goes to what's in the best interest of the children, or you're spending a ton of money or really any money on this person. So that goes to dissipation. And I guess there's a third area as well that people need to be aware of. And that's if there's a maintenance situation or alimony. So if let's say I'm getting divorced from my wife. She's always been the breadwinner. She makes $250,000 a year. I was the stay-at-home dad. And now we split, and I'm making an alimony claim. I'm saying she needs to continue to support me. But then I start dating somebody else and I actually move in with them.
Oh.
I have tanked my alimony claim completely. So
you got a sugar mama, Bobby. That's not good.
I know. I'm working it from both angles. My wife, supported me, and now I'm dating this other lady. She's paying for, the dates as well.
Oh, man.
Sounds good from the outside, but my life is a wreck.
Whew. So that alimony, if you move in with this new sugar mama, you better hope she's sticking around. If she's going to let you stick around, right? Because you're not going to get alimony.
She's got to be sugar mama 2.0, or I am going to be out on the street.
Bobby, this fictional character of yourself needs to go get a job. I love it. Okay. All right. So moving along, next question. Do I have to tell my boss about my divorce? So this hypothetical situation, Lisa is going through a really difficult divorce, and her job is stressful, and she's worried about needing time off from her job for court. So should she tell her boss?
This is a tricky one, and I honestly don't know if I'm qualified to answer this from. This. I think this is as much an HR question as it is a divorce question, and it's really a mental health question. I mean, it depends on who her boss is. It depends on how she feels about her employer. Hopefully she has a PTO policy that's general. Most of us do, and she can just take some days off if she needs to go to court. Or maybe she needs a mental health day and she can just take a day off. It can be tricky to open up your personal life in the workspace and for people to know what's going on. So I think we do need to step lightly when that happens. I know that in my office, I do want my employees to feel comfortable with sharing things with me and know that I'll hold them in confidence and I won't use them against them. And, real life happens. And I know that as a boss that my employees go through some stuff and I want to support them, but not everybody has that sort of work environment.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tricky question. So that's going to have to be kind of your own. You're going to have to feel that out, depending on your work environment, I guess.
And one thing we should add here is that there is in Illinois, you mentioned that it's kind of a messy divorce that she's going through in this scenario. In Illinois, if you're in a situation where there is domestic violence, you have special rights.
Okay.
And it's called VESSA, VESSA. And basically you can take unpaid leave if you're going through that situation. I believe it's up to 12 weeks. So if you are in that sort of divorce where there is domestic violence going on and you have multiple court dates that are happening, there is legal support for you. But I would recommend talking to a lawyer about it, because it can get tricky about what you disclose to your employer, how you disclose it, the level of detail, and all of that. But just know that there are legal support systems for you.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. Okay. So moving on, what happens if I move out of the marital home? We kind of talked a little bit about the home earlier in our first scenario, but in this scenario, Paul moves out of the family home to avoid conflict. Now his wife, Sarah, claims he abandoned the family. Can this hurt his case? So we touched on this, but let's dig in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. So he abandoned the home by moving out. Is that a real thing? Well, it's not really a legal term at all. You don't abandon a home and then you're not entitled to the equity in the house. What you have abandoned, possibly, is your role as the primary caretaker. Like we talked about before, if you're what the court looks at when we're deciding what the schedule should be, one of the key things that the court looks at is, what is the status quo? And this is so huge. What has been going on in the last 6 months? Who's been caring for the kids, getting up with them in the morning, getting them off to school, being there at the end of the day, getting them to soccer practice, making them dinner, putting them to bed? All of that stuff is essential to figuring out who's going to be the primary caretaker, whether it's going to be a 50-50 schedule. So if you move out and then the other side's doing all of that, you've really put yourself behind the 8 ball in a big way.
Now, what if Sarah and Paul discuss this and they realize, hey, this environment of us living together is really stressful. He moves out, but what if they agree to some type of parenting plan on their own and he is seeing the kids? In that case, is he still sort of protected as far as his custody?
Good. First of all, good for you, Sarah and Paul, and I'm being genuine there. Good for you for being able to talk about this and make the decision that's in the best interest of your kids. Figure out, it's not good for us to live under the same roof, so let's make a transition. Yes, if you're able to do that with your spouse and move out, and after you move out, transition into a regular split week schedule or every other week schedule, then congratulations, you have gotten done one of the most difficult parts of many divorces, and that's like going from under the same roof to then co-parenting under 2 different roofs. There's nothing wrong with that. The danger of it is if you don't have absolute trust with your spouse in that regard, and you move out and then
they don't give you access.
Yeah, they don't give you access. Exactly. All of a sudden they say, you know what? I'm not happy that you're dating somebody else. I'm not happy at all. And I don't think that my kids should be around that lady. And so you don't get to see them. Now you have to rush into court and file some motions, and that can get really expensive, really stressful, take a lot longer than you want it to. So you just want to be really careful when you move out that you're 100% on the same page with the other parent.
Okay. All right. Well, Bobby, we covered some really interesting scenarios today. Hopefully it was helpful to people out there. And if you guys have questions, your own questions, please just comment below. We do these Q&As from time to time and would love to answer any questions that you might have about the divorce process. So, Bobby, thanks so much for being here with us today, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast. We hope today's episode gave you clarity and support as you move forward on your journey. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Tune in next week for more insights and expert advice on the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast.